Hi everyone! It's now time to take a look at Team Canada going ahead in this World Junior Championship. Team Canada is absolutely stacked this year with talents and first rounders. Canada is usually the favorite every year, and this year is no different. The expectation will be high since it's probably one of their better teams they iced recently because of the NHL not playing right now. So without waiting any longer, let's take a look at the forward score. Quinton Byfield was just drafted recently by the Los Angeles Kings, second overall in the 2020 NHL entry draft. Last year, he also played in this tournament as a 17 years old, but had only had one assist in 7 games. He will most likely play for the Kings this year as they really need his help. He is a very good and big center who will probably be a superstar in the NHL going forward. Next up, we have Dylan Cozens playing for the Buffalo Sabres in the NHL. Last year, he played for the Lethbridge Hurricanes and had 85 points in 51 games. He is a super hard-working forward and has a lot of talents. He will most likely be a very important piece of Team Canada, as he had 9 points last year. Next up, we have Kirby Dach of the Chicago Blackhawks in the NHL. He is the only player in this list who got a full NHL season around his belt. He had 23 points in 64 games last year for the Chicago Blackhawks and was drafted 3rd overall in the 2019 NHL entry draft. He will be a super important piece of Team Canada, and he is the captain of the team. He will try to lead this team by example. Next, we have Dylan Holloway of the Wisconsin Badgers in the NCAA. He got drafted last year 14 overall by the Edmonton Oilers. He will be a pretty important piece as he already had 2 goals in 2 games in the NCAA, a big improvement from 17 in 35. He has a pretty lethal shot, and if I had to guess, I would say Holloway will be the biggest surprise of Team Canada. Next, we have Peyton Krebs of the Winnipeg Ice in the WHL. He got drafted 17 overall by the Vegas Golden Knights in 2019. He had an impressive 60 points in 38 games last season for Winnipeg and has an incredible hockey IQ and playmaking ability. Next up, we have Connor McMichael of the London Knights in the OHL. McMichael was an absolute steal, drafted back in 2019, 25th overall by the Washington Capitals. He got 102 points in 52 games last year for London and got 7 points in 7 games on the same Team Canada U20 last year. He will be a pretty major piece. His shot is his biggest asset, and I think he will score a lot in this tournament. Next one, we have Dawson Mercer of the Saguenay de Chicoutimi in the QMJHL. Mercer got drafted 18 overall by the New Jersey Devils last year. He is an hard-working forward who can get a lot of points and had a little cup of coffee last year with Team Canada, but had no points in 7 games. He will try to have a bigger role this year. Next, we have Alex Newhook of the Boston College in the NCAA. Newhook, I think, was also a steal back in 2019, drafted 16 overall by the Colorado Avalanche. He had an impressive 42 points in 34 games in his first NCAA freshman season. Next, we have good playmaking forward Jacob Pelletier from les Foreurs de Val-d'Or in the QMJHL. He got drafted 26th overall back in 2019 by the Calgary Flames. This year, playing for Val-d'Or, he had 13 points in 9 games and had 82 points in 57 games playing for the Moncton Wildcats. He is one of the few players who actually played this season from Team Canada. Next, we have Cole Perfetti from the Saginaw Spirit in the Ontario Hockey League. Perfetti was drafted 10th overall in the 2020 NHL draft by the Winnipeg Jets. He has an amazing hockey IQ and playmaking ability, showing by his 74 assists last year in 61 games and 111 points. He will be an important player for this team. Next up, we have Jack Quinn for the Ottawa 67s in the OHL. Quinn was drafted 8th overall last year by the Buffalo Sabres. He had 52 goals in 62 games and had 89 points. He could be an important piece for the power play as he had a pretty good shot. Next is Ryan Suzuki, also from the Saginaw Spirit in the OHL. He was drafted 28th overall in the 2019 draft by the Carolina Hurricanes. Suzuki is a pretty smart player and he got 58 points in 44 games last year in the OHL. Next we have Philip Tomasino from the Oshawa Generals in the OHL. Tomasino was also drafted in the first round last year, 24th overall by the Nashville Predators. He is a pretty complete player and a hard-working player, and he had, with that, a pretty good skill set. Next up, we have Connor Zary from the Kamloops Blazers in the WHL. Zary was drafted 24th overall last year by the Calgary Flames. He had 86 points in 57 games for Kamloops, and he is a pretty hard-working forward and can chip in a goal once in there. Now, the first defenseman on this list is Justin Barron from the Halifax Mooseheads in the QMJHL. Barron was drafted 25th overall last year by the Colorado Avalanche. He had 19 points in 34 games, and this year 7 points in 8 games. He is a pretty good mobile defenseman, has a pretty good hockey mind, and great shot. Next, probably the best defenseman on this roster, Bowen Byron from the Colorado Avalanche. Last year, he played a full season in the WHL with the Vancouver Giants and had 52 points in 50 games. He was drafted back in 2019, 4th overall by the Avalanche, and I think he will make the roster this year for them as he had a lot of talents. He played for Canada last year and only recorded 2 assists, but I think he will have a much bigger role this year. His mobility and offensive instinct, I think, will carry the team offensively from the defense. Next is Jamie Drysdale from the Erie Otters in the OHL. Drysdale was drafted 6th overall last year by the Anaheim Ducks. He had almost a point a game with the Erie Otters with 47 points in 49 games, and had a cup of coffee last year as he's 17 years old with Canada, and he recorded 3 points in 7 games. But I think his role will massively increase this year as he matured a lot, and his offensive output is really impressive. Next is Kaden Gooley from the Prince Albert Raiders in the WHL. He was drafted last year 16th overall by the Montreal Canadiens and recorded 40 points in 64 games for Prince Albert. His offensive output is not only impressive, but his defensive is even more. His defensive capability are really strong and will be one of Canada's best defensive defensemen from this tournament. Next up, we have Thomas Harley from the Dallas Stars in the NHL. Harley got a cup of coffee last year with the Stars, playing 1 game of the NHL playoffs. He got drafted 18th overall back in 2019, and also he played 59 games with the Mississauga Steelheads and recorded 57 points. I think he will make the Stars roster this year as they give him a shot last year in the playoffs. I think he will be one of Canada's best and most important defenseman. Next up, we have Kaden Korczak from the Kelowna Rockets in the Western Hockey League. He was drafted in the second round, 41 overall, in the 2019 NHL entry draft by the Vegas Golden Knights. He had 49 points in 60 games with Kelowna, an impressive total as he is mostly seen as a great defensive defenseman and a big guy. Next is Braden Schneider from the Brandon Wheat Kings of the WHL. Schneider was drafted 19th overall last year by the New York Rangers. He is mostly seen as a defensive defenseman, but he still had 42 points last year in 60 games with Brandon. Last defenseman, we have Jordan-Spence from the Moncton Wildcats in the QMJHL. Spence was a pretty late round steal as he was drafted 95th overall back in the 4th round in 2019 by the Los Angeles Kings. He got 52 points in 60 games and has over a point per game this year as he has 16 in 13. His offensive output is pretty impressive and he could be a wild card from Team Canada. First goalie, we have Dylan Garand from the Kamloops Blazers in the WHL. Garand was a 4th round pick last year by the New York Rangers. He had a .921 save percentage for the Kamloops Blazers, pretty good number, and could be one of Canada's starter. Next goalie, we have Taylor Gauthier from the Prince George Cougars in the WHL. He is the only player not drafted by an NHL team in this Canada's roster. He had a .917 save percentage from the Cougars last year and will try to use the World Juniors as a spotlight for him to be drafted next year in the NHL draft. Next and last goalie is Devon Levi from the Northeastern University in the NCAA. He was drafted in the 7th round last year by the Florida Panthers. He had a pretty crazy year last year playing for Carleton Place Canadiens in the CCHL Junior A in Canada with a .941 save percentage. If he can steal the starter spot as the top Canada's goalie, this could be the biggest story of this entire World Juniors, and I think it could be. So, what do you think about this Canada team? Will they win gold again? I really think they could, as the team is absolutely stacked this year. The forward core and defenseman core are absolutely ridiculous. But the big question mark is the same as last year, goaltending. Who will step up as Canada top netminder, and will he be able to carry them to glory? Only time will tell. So next World Junior preview will be about Czech Republic, so stay tuned.